Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. John Cleese. John Marwood Cleese is an English actor, voice actor, screenwriter, producer and comedian. He achieved success at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe and as a scriptwriter and performer on The Frost Report. In the late 1960s he co-founded Monty Python, the comedy troupe responsible for the sketch show Monty Python's Flying Circus, and the 4 Monty Python films, and now for something completely different, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Life of Brian and the Meaning of Life. In the mid-1970s, Cleese and his first wife Connie Booth co-wrote and starred in the British sitcom Fawlty Towers, with Cleese receiving the 1980 BAFTA for Best Entertainment Performance. Later he co-starred with Kevin Kline, Jamie Lee Curtis and former Python colleague Michael Palin in A Fish Called Wanda and Fierce Creatures, both of which he also wrote. He also starred in Clockwise, and has appeared in many other films including 2 James Bond films as R&Q, 2 Harry Potter films and the last 3 Shrek films. With Yes Minister writer Anthony J. he co-founded Video Arts, a production company making entertaining training films. In 1976, Cleese co-founded the Secret Policeman's Ball benefit shows to raise funds for the human rights organization Amnesty International. Early life. Cleese was born in Weston-super-Mare, Somerset, the only child of Reginald Francis Cleese, an insurance salesman, and his wife Muriel Evelyn. His family's surname was originally Cheese, but his father had thought it was embarrassing and changed it when he enlisted in the army during the First World War. As a child, Cleese supported Bristol City FC and Somerset County Cricket Club. Cleese was educated at St Peter's Preparatory School, where he received a prize for English and did well at cricket and boxing. When he was 13, he was awarded an exhibition at Clifton College, an English public school in Bristol. He was already more than 6 feet tall by then. Cleese allegedly defaced the school grounds as a prank by painting footprints to suggest that the statue of Field Marshal Earl Haig had got down from his plinth and gone to the toilet. Cleese played cricket in the first 11 and did well academically, passing 8 O-levels and 3 A-levels in mathematics, physics and chemistry. In his autobiography So Anyway, he says that discovering age 17 he had not been made a house prefect by his housemaster affected his outlook. It was not fair, and therefore it was unworthy of my respect. I believe that this moment changed my perspective on the world. He could not go straight to Cambridge, as the ending of national service meant there were twice the usual number of applicants for places. So he returned to his prep school for 2 years to teach science, English, geography, history, and Latin. He then took up a place he had won at Downing College, Cambridge, to read law. He also joined the Cambridge Footlights. He recalled that he went to the Cambridge Guildhall, where each university society had a stall, and went up to the Footlights stall, where he was asked if he could sing or dance. He replied no, as he was not allowed to sing at his school because he was so bad, and if there was anything worse than his singing, it was his dancing. He was then asked, "Well, what do you do?" To which he replied, "I make people laugh." At the Footlights Theatrical Club he spent a lot of time with Tim Brooke Taylor and Bill Oddie, and met his future writing partner Graham Chapman. Cleese wrote extra material for the 1961 Footlights Review, I Thought I Saw It Move, and was registrar for the Footlights Club during 1962. He was also in the cast of the 1962 Footlights Review Double Take. Cleese graduated from Cambridge in 1963 with a 2-1. Despite his successes on The Frost Report, his father would send him cuttings from the Daily Telegraph offering management jobs in places like Marks and Spencer. Pre-Python. Cleese was a scriptwriter as well as a cast member for the 1963 Footlights revue A Clump of Plinths. The revue was so successful at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe that it was renamed Cambridge Circus and taken to the West End in London and then on a tour of New Zealand and Broadway, with the cast also appearing in some of the revue's sketches on The Ed Sullivan Show in October 1964. After Cambridge Circus, Cleese briefly stayed in America, performing on and off Broadway. While performing in the musical Half a Sixpence, Cleese met future Python Terry Gilliam, as well as American actress Connie Booth, whom he married on the 20th of February 1968. At their wedding, at a Unitarian church in Manhattan, the couple attempted to ensure an absence of any theistic language. The only moment of disappointment, Cleese recalled, came at the very end of the service when I discovered that I'd failed to excise one particular mention of the word God. Later, Booth would become a writing partner. He was soon offered work as a writer with BBC Radio, where he worked on several programmes, most notably as a sketch writer for The Dick Emery Show. The success of the Footlights revue led to the recording of a short series of half-hour radio programmes called I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, which were so popular that the BBC commissioned a regular series with the same title that ran from 1965 to 1974. Cleese returned to Britain and joined the cast. In many episodes he is credited as John Otto Cleese. Also in 1965, Cleese and Chapman began writing on The Frost Report. The writing staff chosen for The Frost Report consisted of a number of writers and performers who would go on to make names for themselves in comedy. They included co-performers from I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again and future goodies Bill Oddie and Tim Brooke-Taylor, and also Frank Muir, Barry Cryer, Marty Feldman, Ronnie Barker, Ronnie Corbett, Dick Vosberg, and future Python members Eric Idle, Terry Jones, and Michael Palin. While working on The Frost Report, the future Pythons developed the writing styles that would make their collaboration significant. Cleese's and Chapman's sketches often involved authority figures, some of whom were performed by Cleese, while Jones and Palin were both infatuated with filmed scenes that opened with idyllic countryside panoramas. Idle was one of those charged with writing David Frost's monologue. During this period, Cleese met and befriended influential British comedian Peter Cook. It was as a performer on The Frost Report that Cleese achieved his breakthrough on British television as a comedy actor, appearing as the tall patrician figure in the classic class sketch, contrasting comically in a lineup with a shorter middle-class Ronnie Barker and the even shorter working-class Ronnie Corbett. This series was so popular that in 1966 Cleese and Chapman were invited to work as writers and performers with Brooke-Taylor and Feldman on At Last, the 1948 show, during which time the Four Yorkshiremen sketch was written by all four writers, performers. Cleese and Chapman also wrote episodes for the first series of Doctor in the House. These series were successful, and in 1969, Cleese and Chapman were offered their very own series. However, owing to Chapman's alcoholism, Cleese found himself bearing an increasing workload in the partnership and was therefore unenthusiastic about doing a series with just the two of them. He had found working with Palin on The Frost Report an enjoyable experience and invited him to join the series. Palin had previously been working on Do Not Adjust Your Set with Idle and Jones, with Terry Gilliam creating the animations. The four of them had, on the back of the success of Do Not Adjust Your Set, been offered a series for Thames Television, which they were waiting to begin when Cleese's offer arrived. Palin agreed to work with Cleese and Chapman in the meantime, bringing with him Gilliam, Jones, and Idle. Monty Python. Monty Python's Flying Circus ran for 4 seasons from October 1969 to December 1974 on BBC television, though Cleese quit the show after the third. Cleese's two primary characterizations were as a sophisticated and a stressed-out loony. He portrayed the former as a series of announcers, TV show hosts and government officials. The latter is perhaps best represented in The Cheese Shop and by Cleese's Mr. Praline character, the man with a dead Norwegian blue parrot and a menagerie of other animals all named Eric. He was also known for his working-class sergeant major character who worked as a police sergeant, Roman centurion, etc. He is also seen as the opening announcer with a now-famous line in Now for Something Completely Different, although in its premiere in the sketch Man with Three Buttocks, the phrase was spoken by Eric Idle. Partnership with Graham Chapman. Along with Gilliam's animations, Cleese's work with Graham Chapman provided Python with its darkest and angriest moments, and many of his characters display the seething, suppressed rage that later characterized his portrayal of Basil Fawlty. Unlike Palin and Jones, Cleese and Chapman wrote together in the same room. Cleese claims that their writing partnership involved Cleese doing most of the work, while Chapman sat back not speaking for long periods before suddenly coming out with an idea that often elevated the sketch to a new level. A classic example of this is the Dead Parrot sketch, envisaged by Cleese as a satire on poor customer service, which was originally to have involved a broken toaster and later a broken car. It was Chapman's suggestion to change the faulty item into a dead parrot, and he also suggested that the parrot be specifically a Norwegian blue, giving the sketch a surreal air which made it far more memorable. Their humor often involved ordinary people in ordinary situations behaving absurdly, for no obvious reason, like Chapman. Cleese's poker-face, clipped middle-class accent and intimidating height allowed him to appear convincingly as a variety of authority figures, such as policemen, detectives, Nazi officers, or government officials, which he would then proceed to undermine. Most famously in The Ministry of Silly Walks sketch, Cleese exploits his stature as the crane-legged civil servant performing a grotesquely elaborate walk to his office. Chapman and Cleese also specialized in sketches where two characters would conduct highly articulate arguments over completely arbitrary subjects, such as in The Cheese Shop, The Dead Parrot sketch, and Argument Clinic, where Cleese plays a stone-faced bureaucrat employed to sit behind a desk and engage people in pointless, trivial bickering. All of these roles were opposite Palin. The comic contrast between the towering Cleese's crazed aggression and the shorter Palin's shuffling inoffensiveness is a common feature in the series. Occasionally the typical Cleese-Palin dynamic is reversed, as in Fish License, wherein Palin plays the bureaucrat with whom Cleese is trying to work. Though the program lasted 4 series, by the start of Series 3, Cleese was growing tired of dealing with Chapman's alcoholism. He felt, too, that the show's scripts had declined in quality. For these reasons he became restless and decided to move on. Though he stayed for the 3rd series, he officially left the group before the 4th season. Despite this, he remained friendly with the group, and all 6 began writing Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Cleese received a credit on 3 episodes of the 4th series which used material from these sessions, though he was officially unconnected with the 4th series. Cleese returned to the troupe to co-write and co-star in the Monty Python films Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Monty Python's Life of Brian, and Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, and participated in various live performances over the years. Post-Python activities. From 1970 to 1973, Cleese served as rector of the University of St Andrews. His election proved a milestone for the university, revolutionizing and modernizing the post For instance, the rector was traditionally entitled to appoint an assessor, a deputy, to sit in his place at important meetings in his absence. Cleese changed this into a position for a student elected across campus by the student body, resulting in direct access and representation for the student body. Around this time, Cleese worked with comedian Les Dawson on his sketch stand-up show SEZ Les. The differences between the two physically and socially were marked, but both worked well together from Series 8 onwards until the series ended in 1976. Fawlty Towers. Cleese achieved greater prominence in the United Kingdom as the neurotic hotel manager Basil Fawlty in Fawlty Towers, which he co-wrote with his wife Connie Booth. The series won 3 BAFTA awards when produced, and in 2000, it topped the British Film Institute's list of the 100 greatest British television programmes. The series also featured Prunella Scales as Basil's acerbic wife Sybil, Andrew Sachs as the much-abused Spanish waiter Manuel, and Booth as waitress Polly, the series voice of Sanity. Cleese based Basil Fawlty on a real person, Donald Sinclair, whom he had encountered in 1970 while the Monty Python team were staying at the Glen Eagles Hotel in Torquay while filming inserts for their television series. Reportedly, Cleese was inspired by Sinclair's mantra, "I could run this hotel just fine if it weren't for the guests." He later described Sinclair as the most wonderfully rude man I have ever met. Although Sinclair's widow has said her husband was totally misrepresented in the series. During the Python's stay, Sinclair allegedly threw Idle's briefcase out of the hotel in case it contained a bomb, complained about Gilliam's American table manners, and threw a bus timetable at another guest after they dared to ask the time of the next bus to town. The first series was screened from the 19th of September 1975 on BBC Two, initially to poor reviews, but gained momentum when repeated on BBC One the following year. Despite this, a second series did not air until 1979, by which time Cleese's marriage to Booth had ended, but they revived their collaboration for the second series. Fawlty Towers consisted of only 12 episodes. Cleese and Booth both maintain that this was to avoid compromising the quality of the series. In December 1977, Cleese appeared as a guest star on The Muppet Show. Cleese was a fan of the show, and co-wrote much of the episode. Cleese also made a cameo appearance in the 1981 film The Great Muppet Caper. Cleese won the TV Times Award for Funniest Man on TV 1978-79, 1980s and 1990s. During the 1980s and 1990s, Cleese focused on film, though he did work with Peter Cook in his one-off TV special Peter Cook & Co. in 1980. In the same year, Cleese played Petruchio in Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew in the BBC television Shakespeare series. In 1981 he starred with Sean Connery and Michael Palin in the Terry Gilliam-directed Time Bandits as Robin Hood. He also participated in Monty Python Live at the Hollywood Bowl, and starred in The Secret Policeman's Ball for Amnesty International. In 1985, Cleese had a small dramatic role as a sheriff in Silverado, which had an all-star cast that included Kevin Kline, with whom he would star in A Fish Called Wanda 3 years later. In 1986, he starred in Clockwise as an uptight school headmaster obsessed with punctuality and constantly getting into trouble during a journey to speak at the headmasters' conference. Timed with the 1987 UK elections, he appeared in a video promoting proportional representation. In 1988 he wrote and starred in A Fish Called Wanda as the lead Archie Leach, along with Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline and Michael Palin. Wanda was a commercial and critical success. and Cleese was nominated for an Academy Award for his script. Cynthia Cleese starred as Leach's daughter. Graham Chapman was diagnosed with throat cancer in 1989. Cleese, Michael Palin, Peter Cook, and Chapman's partner David Sherlock witnessed Chapman's death. Chapman's death occurred a day before the 20th anniversary of the first broadcast of Flying Circus, with Jones commenting the worst case of party pooping in all history. Cleese's eulogy at Chapman's memorial service, in which he became the first person ever at a British memorial service to say "fuck," has since become legendary. Cleese would later play a supporting role in Kenneth Branagh's adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein alongside Branagh himself and Robert De Niro. He also produced and acted in a number of successful business training films, including Meetings, Bloody Meetings, and More Bloody Meetings. These were produced by his company Video Arts, with Robin Skinner. The group analyst and family therapist, Cleese wrote 2 books on relationships, families and how to survive them, and life and how to survive it. The books are presented as a dialogue between Skinner and Cleese. In 1996, Cleese declined the British honour of Commander of the Order of the British Empire. The follow-up to A Fish Called Wanda, Fierce Creatures, which again starred Cleese alongside Kevin Kline, Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Palin, was also released that year but was greeted with mixed reception by critics and audiences. Cleese has since often stated that making the second film had been a mistake. When asked by his friend, director and restaurant critic Michael Winner what he would do differently if he could live his life again, Cleese responded, "I wouldn't have married Alice Faye Eichelberger, and I wouldn't have made Fierce Creatures." In 1999, Cleese appeared in the James Bond film The World Is Not Enough as QS assistant, referred to by Bond as R. In 2002, when Cleese reprised his role in Die Another Day, the character was promoted, making Cleese the new quartermaster of MI6. In 2004, Cleese was featured as Q in the video game James Bond 007, Everything and Nothing, featuring his likeness and voice. Cleese did not appear in the subsequent Bond films Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace and Skyfall. In the latter film, Ben Whishaw was cast in the role of Q. 2000s and 2010s. Cleese's provost visiting professor at Cornell University after having been Andrew D. White Professor at Large from 1999 to 2006. He makes occasional well-received appearances on the Cornell campus. In 2001, Cleese was cast in the comedy Rat Race as the eccentric hotel owner Donald P. Sinclair, the name of the Torquay hotel owner on whom he had based the character of Basil Fawlty. In 2002, Cleese made a cameo appearance in the film The Adventures of Pluto Nash, in which he played James, a computerized chauffeur of a hover car stolen by the title character. The vehicle is subsequently destroyed in a chase, leaving the chauffeur stranded in a remote place on the moon. In 2003, Cleese appeared as Lyle Finster on the US sitcom Will was played by Minnie Driver. In the series, Lyle Finster briefly marries Karen Walker. In 2004, Cleese was credited as co-writer of a DC Comics graphic novel titled Superman, True Brit, part of DC's Elseworlds line of imaginary stories. True Brit, mostly written by Kim Howard Johnson, suggests what might have happened had Superman's rocket ship landed in Britain, not America. From the 10th of November to the 9th of December 2005, Cleese toured New Zealand with his stage show, John Cleese, His Lifetimes and Current Medical Problems. Cleese described it as a one-man show, with several people in it, which pushes the envelope of acceptable behavior in new and disgusting ways. The show was developed in New York City with William Goldman, and includes Cleese's daughter Camilla as a writer and actor. his assistant of many years. Gary Scott Irvin also appeared and was listed as a co-producer. The show then played in universities in California and Arizona from the 10th of January to the 25th of March 2006 under the title 7 Ways to Skin an Ocelot. His voice can be downloaded for directional guidance purposes as a downloadable option on some personal GPS navigation device. Models by company TomTom. In a 2005 poll of comedians in Comedy Insider's The Comedian's Comedian, Cleese was voted second only to Peter Cook. Also in 2005, a long-standing piece of Internet humor, the revocation of independence of the United States, was wrongly attributed to Cleese. In 2006, Cleese hosted a television special of football's greatest kicks, goals, saves, bloopers, plays, and penalties, as well as football's influence on culture, featuring interviews with pop culture icons Dave Stewart, Dennis Hopper, and Henry Kissinger, as well as eminent footballers including Pelé, Mia Hamm, and Thierry Henry. The Art of Soccer, with John Cleese, was released in North America on DVD in January 2009 by BFS Entertainment. Don't mention the World Cup. Cleese lent his voice to the BioWare video game Jade Empire. His role was that of an outlander named Sir Roderick Ponce von Fontelbottom the Magnificent Bastard, stranded in the imperial city of the Jade Empire. His character is essentially a British colonialist stereotype who refers to the people of the Jade Empire as savages in need of enlightenment. His armor has the design of a fork stuck in a piece of cheese. He also had a cameo appearance in the computer game Starship Titanic as the bomb designed by Douglas Adams. In 2007, Cleese appeared in ads for Titleist as a golf course designer named Ian McAllister, who represents golf designers against distance. Also in 2007, he started filming the sequel to The Pink Panther titled The Pink Panther 2 with Steve Martin and Aishwarya Rai. On the 27th of September 2007, Cleese announced he was to produce a series of video podcasts called HEADCAST. Cleese released the first episode of this series in April 2008 on his own website headcast.co.uk. Cleese collaborated with Los Angeles guitar quartet member William Canengizer in 2008 on the text to the performance piece The Ingenious Gentleman of La Mancha. Cleese as narrator, and the LAGQ premiered the work in Santa Barbara. 2008 also saw reports of Cleese working on a musical version of A Fish Called Wanda with his daughter Camilla. At the end of March 2009, Cleese published his first article as contributing editor to The Spectator. The real reason I had to join The Spectator. Cleese has also hosted comedy galas at the Montreal Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in 2006 and again in 2009. Towards the end of 2009, and into 2010, Cleese appeared in a series of television adverts for the Norwegian electric goods shop chain Elkjøp. In March 2010, it was announced that Cleese would be playing Jasper in the video game Fable 3. In 2009 and 2010, Cleese toured Scandinavia and the US with his Alimony Tour Year 1 and Year 2. In May 2010, it was announced that this tour would extend to the UK set for May 2011. The show is dubbed the Alimony Tour in reference to the financial implications of Cleese's divorce. The UK tour started in Cambridge on the 3rd of May. Visiting Birmingham, Nottingham, Salford, York, Liverpool, Leeds, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Oxford, Bristol, and Bath. Later in 2011, John took his Alimony tour to South Africa. He played Cape Town on the 21, from 25 to the 30th of October. In January 2012, he took his one-man show to Australia, starting in Perth on the 22nd of January and throughout the next 4 months visited Adelaide, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Newcastle, New South Wales, Melbourne, Sydney, and finished up during April in Canberra. In October 2010, Cleese was featured in the launch of an advertising campaign by the Automobile Association for a new home emergency response product. He appeared as a man who believed the AA could not help him during a series of disasters, including water pouring through his ceiling, with the line "the AA for faulty showers." During 2010, Cleese appeared in a series of radio advertisements for the Canadian insurance company Pacific Blue Cross, in which he plays a character called Dr. Nigel Bilkington, Chief of Medicine for American General Hospital. In May 2012, he did a week run of shows in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, entitled An Evening with John Cleese. He was at the Madinat Theatre Souk Madinat Jumeirah from Wednesday 23rd to Saturday 26th. In 2012, Cleese was cast in Hunting Elephants, an upcoming heist comedy by Israeli filmmaker Reshef Levi. Cleese had to quit just prior to filming due to heart trouble, and was replaced by Patrick Stewart. Between September and October 2013, Cleese embarked on his first ever cross-Canada comedy tour, entitled John Cleese Last Time to See Me Before I Die Tour. He visited Halifax, Ottawa, Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, Victoria, and finished in Vancouver, performing to mostly sold-out venues. Cleese returned to the stage in Dubai in November 2013, where he performed to a sold-out theatre. Cleese was interviewed, and appears as himself, in filmmaker Gracie Otto's 2013 documentary film The Last Impresario, about Cleese's longtime friend and colleague Michael White. White produced Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and Cleese's pre-Python comedy production Cambridge Circus. At a comic press conference in November 2013, Cleese and other surviving members of the Monty Python comedy group announced a reuniting performance to be held in July 2014. In a Reddit Ask Me Anything interview, Cleese expressed regret that he had turned down the role played by Robin Williams in The Birdcage, the butler in The Remains of the Day, and the clergyman played by Peter Cook in The Princess Bride. Admiration for black humor. In his Alimony tour, Cleese explained the origin of his fondness for black humor: the only thing that he inherited from his mother. Examples of it are the Dead Parrot sketch, the Kipper and the Corpse episode of Fawlty Towers, his clip for the 1992 BBC Two mockumentary A Question of Taste, the Undertaker's sketch, the Mr. Creosote character in The Meaning of Life, and his eulogy at Graham Chapman's memorial service. Cleese blamed his mother, who lived to the age of 101, for his problems in relationships with women, saying, "It cannot be a coincidence that I spent such a large part of my life in some form of therapy, and that the vast majority of the problems I was dealing with involved relationships with women." Politics. A long-running supporter of the Liberal Democrats, having previously been a Labour Party voter, Cleese switched to the SDP after their formation in 1981 and during the 1987 general election. Cleese recorded a 9-minute party political broadcast for the SDP Liberal Alliance, which spoke about the similarities and failures of the other two parties in a more humorous tone than standard political broadcasts. Cleese has since appeared in broadcasts for the Liberal Democrats in the 1997 general election and narrating a radio election broadcast for the party during the 2001 general election. In April 2010, Cleese expressed his support for the Liberal Democrats on Twitter after Nick Clegg performed strongly in the First Leaders debate on ITV1, stating, well, First Leaders debate and Lib Dems do so well. Good luck to them." In the 2017 general election, he expressed support for both the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. In 2008, Cleese expressed support for Barack Obama and his presidential candidacy, offering his services as a speechwriter. He was an outspoken critic of Republican vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, saying that Michael Palin is no longer the funniest Palin. The same year, he wrote a satirical poem about Fox News commentator Sean Hannity for Countdown with Keith Olbermann. In 2011, Cleese declared his appreciation for Britain's coalition government between the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats, saying, "I think what is happening at the moment is rather interesting. The coalition has made everything a little more courteous and a little more flexible. I think it was quite good that the Liberal Democrats had to compromise a bit with the Tories." He also criticized the previous Labour government, commenting, "Although my inclinations are slightly left of centre, I was terribly disappointed with the last Labour government. Gordon Brown lacked emotional intelligence and was never a leader." Cleese also declared his support for proportional representation. In April 2011, Cleese revealed that he had declined a life peerage for political services in 1999. Outgoing leader of the Liberal Democrats Paddy Ashdown had put forward the suggestion shortly before he stepped down, with the idea that Cleese would take the party whip and sit as a working peer. But the actor quipped that he realized this involved being in England in the winter, and "I thought that was too much of a price to pay." In an interview with the Daily Telegraph in 2014, Cleese expressed political interest with regard to the UK Independence Party, saying that although he was in doubt as to whether he was prepared to vote for them, he was attracted to its challenge to the established political order and the radicalism of its policies with regard to the United Kingdom's membership of the European Union. He expressed support for immigration, but also concern about the integration of immigrants into British culture. Talking to Der Spiegel in 2015, Cleese expressed a critical view on what he saw as a plutocracy that was unhealthily developing control of the governance of the First World societies, stating that he had reached a point when he saw that our existence here is absolutely hopeless. "I see the rich have got a stranglehold on us. If somebody had said that to me when I was 20, I would have regarded him as a left-wing loony." In 2016, Cleese publicly supported the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union in the referendum on the issue, during then-Republican nominee Donald Trump's run for the U.S. presidency in 2016. Cleese described Trump as a narcissist with no attention span, who doesn't have clear ideas about anything and makes it all up as he goes along. He had previously described the leadership of the Republican Party as the most cynical, most disgracefully immoral people I've ever come across in a Western civilization. Personal life. Cleese met Connie Booth in the US and they married in 1968. In 1971, Booth gave birth to Cynthia Cleese, their only child. With Booth, Cleese wrote the scripts for and co-starred in both series of Fawlty Towers, even though the two were actually divorced before the second series was finished and aired. Cleese and Booth are said to have remained close friends since. Cleese has two grandchildren, Evan and Olivia, through his eldest daughter's marriage to Ed Solomon. Cleese married the American actress Barbara Trentham in 1981. Their daughter Camilla, Cleese's second child, was born in 1984. He and Trentham divorced in 1990. During this time, Cleese moved to Los Angeles. In 1992 he married American psychotherapist Alice Faye Eichelberger. They divorced in 2008. The divorce settlement left Eichelberger with £12 million in finance and assets, including £600,000 a year for 7 years. Cleese said, What I find so unfair is that if we both died today, her children would get much more than mine. I got off lightly. Think what I'd have had to pay Alice if she had contributed anything to the relationship, such as children or a conversation. Less than a year later he returned to the UK, where he has property in London and a home on the Royal Crescent in Bath, Somerset. In August 2012, Cleese married English jewellery designer and former model Jennifer Wade in a ceremony in the Caribbean. In March 2015, in an interview with Der Spiegel, he was asked if he was religious. Cleese stated that he didn't think much of organised religion and said he was not committed to anything except the vague feeling that there is something more going on than the materialist reductionist people think. Cleese has a passion for lemurs. Following the 1997 comedy film Fierce Creatures, in which the ring-tailed lemur played a key role, he hosted the 1998 BBC documentary In the Wild, Operation Lemur with John Cleese, which tracked the progress of a reintroduction of black and white ruffed lemurs back into Beaton-Pona Reserve in Madagascar. The project had been partly funded by Cleese's donation of the proceeds from the London premiere of Fierce Creatures. Cleese is quoted as saying, "I adore lemurs. They're extremely gentle, well-mannered, pretty, and yet great fun. I should have married one." The Bamaraha woolly lemur, also known as Cleese's woolly lemur, is native to western Madagascar. The scientist who discovered the species named it after Cleese mainly because of Cleese's fondness for lemurs and his efforts at protecting and preserving them. The species was first discovered in 1990 by a team of scientists from Zurich University led by Urs Thalmann, but was not formally described as a species until the 11th of November 2005. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?